How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Lwazi.
I understand it's very busy, especially at this time of the year. But you know what? When I read the press release on the incredible work that's been done, specifically with that N3 and the Port of Gauteng, I couldn't miss the opportunity, not to just congratulate the effort you and your team have put in, but to obviously discover just a little bit more about. This will be my first question. What did it take in terms of prep and for you guys to get as far as you did? Maybe you could just give me just a little bit of insight in terms of to put together a project of this magnitude, the type of time it took and the type of quality of the people that you had to work with.
The marketing or the land assembly and the idea about the port.
I think beautiful. So you can break it down for me if those three segments, and you can take it from whichever one, because I would imagine they're all interlinked.
Yeah, I've been in property 37 years.
Mhm.
Many years ago, in 1992, 1993, I sold Limburg Park industrial area to retail property projects. They developed that. So I had an eye for land and sold land. That's my business.
Mm.
And then friends of mine import quite a bit, and they do about 1,000 containers a year. So I've got an idea about how it works and things like that. And
Yes.
then I could see about 15 years ago that the market are changing. Logistics properties are going to be the future. And
Mm.
Joburg was densifying. They started building high-rise office blocks. I got a
Yeah.
BCom degree. We used to build double-story houses and used to call them offices when Joburg wasn't dense. And the
Yeah.
shopping centers got bigger and more involved. So I decided logistics properties is my game.
Mm.
And then we looked around, and I did some 2 years of articles when I was a younger guy. And by chance, I did a lot of article with the companies we audited. Was there on the East Rand. So I just drove around and got a feel for it again. And then this position popped out.
Mm.
And 13 years ago, we took the first option there. And slowly we started buying more and thinking about it and going to conferences and got to immersed in logistics. And then we launched in October 2019. We bought the last piece that we wanted to buy in just the year before, and then planned the year for a launch. And then came COVID, bang, boom, and put everything on hold. And then we got lots of people coming to see us and ask us this and this can work and that can't work. And also when I got into this, I paid a few rail professors and they took me around. I call them rail professors, but they're not really professors, but people experts in this game, got to learn the logistics game. And luckily, being in property, you're exposed, And a friend of mine is in the construction industry, and he's building a few of these big warehouses. And we saw what other companies do and why and whatnot. And it, luckily, since 2019, we had time to think about life. And we
Yeah.
saw what solar is doing, and yeah, and that's how it came about. And then I got a marketing lady in to do up the website and stuff, and she said no, yeah, she'll do that, but she doesn't know anything about logistics. And she got hold of Catherine, and Catherine got hold of Bridget.
Oh,
And
great.
over the years, I've got a good relationship with Gabby de Abru. It's one of the best graphic designers in the country. So we got
Okay.
him involved to do the graphic design, and that's how we put it, the marketing together. And yeah, and I said, but yeah, from I've been 37 years in property,
Mm.
and 15 years now I focus just on logistics properties.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's what it is. Time. It's
Mm.
time in the
Okay.
market, time in the game, that teaches, it doesn't teach, time alone does nothing, but nothing
Mm.
happens without time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why is this white paper coming out now? What makes it so important?
Because we need to do it now. As I said, I've been watching all of us in Joburg goes to Durban every now and then. So we've driven the N3. I've got memories of going on the N3 when I was a youngster, when it basically was only patches of the N3, where when you went through Lady Smith and Escort, and then
Mm.
the first guy or the second guy I worked for in the property business, a guy called Joe Ardendorf. He lives in Australia now. He
Wow.
developed that Ultra City on the one at Escort, the first Ultra City in the
Yeah.
country.
Oh yeah.
And I started working for him when he was doing the second and third Ultra City in the country. And he
Mm.
told me about his struggles and why and things like that. So I had a good grounding as to what's the
Mm.
N3 and things like that. So it always stuck in the background.
Yes.
That's how I got to know about the N3. So I was always aware that the N3 has got problems, and I read quite a bit, so I was aware of it. And then over the years, I saw what's happening there, and I saw the horrific accidents, and for us, the better Durban port works, and the better the corridor works, the better the Port of Gauteng works. So
True.
that then I could see. And I don't want to be arrogant, but people look at it at portions. And as I said, I had numerous people coming to see me having proposals for the Port of Gauteng, and I could see that the government officials or the politicians or the people working haven't got the bigger picture. So I decided it's time that I bring all the things together. And
Yeah.
now with the N3 toll concession coming into an end in 4 years' time, and yeah, and as I said, and during COVID, or just after COVID, they started building that N3 N2 link. And
Yes.
I used to go to Nottingham Road quite often, but it became such a nightmare that you didn't want to go to Nottingham Road because it's like taking your life in your own hands if you travel on it. And the last time I went there for a weekend, there were some accidents on the N3. And when I left Belito and I pressed the GPS, it said 2 minutes, 2 hours and 5 minutes. I got
Mm.
to Nottingham Road 5 hours later because on the way there was an accident, and then it diverted you here and it diverted you there. And so I also know now when that is finished, how it's going to help the truckers. And and over the years being exposed to it, I realize somebody now needs to take the bull by the horn, address this thing properly, and that's what I've done. So it's been in the sort of in my head and pieces
Yeah.
over the years and many years, and knowing, I live half the time in Belito and half the time in Joburg. I fly
Yeah.
most of the time, but I also drive quite often. So I know what the road looks like, and I know when
Absolutely.
to avoid it.
Absolutely. What are some of the last 10 to 20 years, I'd say, what are some of the big, really significant changes, that you've seen happening that have impacted our transport and our logistics supply chain as a whole within that Durban to Gauteng route? Because it's such an important route that connects not only just the country's ports, but it connects the country into our regional neighbors.
1960, before they started building the N3, it
Mm.
was 635 kilometers to
Okay.
get from Barry Marrero to the Port of Durban. Now it's 550 kilometers. It used to
Okay.
be a tiring road to get to Durban. And I remember as a kid, some of the older people used to sleep over at Lady Smith. It wasn't a
Mm.
day trip. And then the highway was fully done, and you didn't have to overtake anybody on the other side of a solid white line. It's all double carriage. I don't know what's the correct word. So there's no risky maneuvers. So it made it so much easier. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and then the truck started swamping it. So I
Oh,
remember in 2001, the first time I went to Belito, I left the morning there on that 1st of May. That it was the end of that long weekend at the end of April. And I know the toll gates are busy, so I left early. That I don't, there'll be a lot of traffic. I left Belito 6 o'clock in the morning. I
wow.
stopped twice, and I was in Joburg at 12 o'clock. Yeah, I stopped two places somewhere there. Now that same trip takes you 7 hours, an hour longer because of the trucks. And on a bad day, it takes you 8 hours.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's how it slowed down. Look, they also put that that speed reduction between Warden and Harry Smith. They introduced that about 10 years ago because it doesn't meet the N3 standards, or it's Sunrail pushing for the Beers bypass. But so they slowed you down by about 15 minutes. But the trucks say that slows you down by 15 minutes. The truck slowed it down by another 45 minutes. And then if you hit a bad day, it's 8 hours. And I believe if you drive on 16 December and you wait half an hour at every toll booth, it can take you 10 hours to get from the East Rand to Mhlanga.
What is your vision for the Port of Gauteng in terms of what are some of the areas it hopes to ease?
The white paper hopes to ease the N3 congestion. Then you can get from Durban to the Port of Gauteng, and you either take your stuff off the train or take it off the PBS truck, and then you can deliver it at 10 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning and take away the peak hour delivery time. I think that's what's going to happen. So that's where the Port of Gauteng can play a part, that it can be a holding pattern. It can just, it's a conveyor belt from Durban to Gauteng.
Wow.
So that the stuff moves out of Durban, that Durban is freed up around the harbor, and then it sits close to the market that you can deliver when the traffic is not that bad. If you don't have it and you come straight from Durban, say to North Riding, and you arrive at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, then you're stuck in the traffic, and it's can take you 2 hours from Port of Gauteng to North Riding. Or if you go at 10 o'clock at night, it will take you 35 minutes. So that's the contribution, and that we think it will be for Gauteng. But it's mostly for the corridor that it will help. And then the trains will also reduce the trains work better. It will reduce the traffic on the corridor between Durban and Gauteng.
You bring in a very, I was definitely going to come to the topic of rail. There's a performance-based standards, for trucks with rail freight. And how does this play into your strategy, and how do we imagine it working out? Specifically, taking note of rail, what are the changes for the good that we can expect?
The PBS, the performance-based system trucks, they will allow longer trucks and bigger trucks, but they're safer and whatever. Now, there's a thing, if somebody drives on the N3, they'll see how many trucks come up with a single container on it.
Oh.
Most of the trucks have got a single container on it. And then I started asking why. 85% of the containers coming into South Africa is a 12-meter container, and only 15% are 6-meter containers, because we import lightweight stuff like clothing and TVs and stuff like that. The crane in Durban harbors, and I think it's all harbors in the world, can only lift 25 tons off the ships. So if you've got heavy stuff, then it goes into a small container, but the rest goes into the big containers. Now, our legal length of a normal truck is 22 meters. So it's the horse of 4 meters, then a 6-meter container and a 12-meter container. So now you take the 15 and you take 15 long ones, and then there's 70% of the containers doesn't have a mate. So they go on a 16 or 17-meter truck. Now, if you allow the performance-based trucks from the Port of Durban to the Port of Gauteng, and you allow the horse and then a 12-meter container trailer, and then a junction, and then a 12-meter container, then it can take more containers, so that 70% that's left over gets cut off. So already 35% of the containers are reduced, and then you can put 2 small ones and 1 long one, or 4 small ones, so you get to like 40% of the container trucks gets off the road. Now they're much more efficient, so you can toll them much higher.
Oh yes.
But the problem is, if you toll the trucks too much, then they go off by Howick, and they get on other side Mooi River, they bypass the tolls, and they go off at Groot, and because it's cheaper for them to go the back route than pay the heavy tolls. But these longer trucks are abnormal trucks. And my submission to the government is keep them abnormal trucks. Then they need a permit. Then you say you may not leave the N3. So now the toll concession can make a much bigger income. Now, I think the toll concession is making a massive profit already because the truck volumes has gone up much higher than predicted.
Okay.
So my suggestion is in 2029 that the toll concession, when it comes to end, must be changed from a profit-based model to a cost recovery model and a demand management model for certain days of the year. And then that profit plus this extra profit of the PBS trucks, take that and subsidize the rail so that we get 50-50. The moment there's 50% of the cargo on rail, then you can lessen the subsidy from road to rail. That way the tolls will come down, but not that much. But there'll be quite a bit of money that goes into rail. And then if the rail gets subsidized, there'll be more trucks off the road. And then it's easier for a holiday person to get to Durban, and it saves the KwaZulu-Natal holiday destination. Because people are getting scared to drive down and think about their booking, when they want to go, when they don't want to go, because and then you bring in demand management. Easter Monday, 16 December, and days like that, the stats will show you. You do what they do in Italy. You put up the tolls 1,000% for that day on certain times of that day for trucks. You publish it beforehand that they can do their planning. Then there's basically very few trucks on the road. Only emergency stuff moves. Then the holiday makers can go much better. And then if you manage the tolls better, where you can just tap, or more people then have e-tags that they can fly through the tolls. Then on the 16th of December, instead of taking you 12 hours or whatever from Boksburg to Mshlanga, because it's bumper to bumper traffic, you do it in 7 hours, and the risk of accidents are less. So it's not that we anti-truckers, but we can't let the N3 become a truck highway and kill all other business and let the rail perish. The billions of rands of infrastructure lie there, go to rot and ruin, and now we must put more lanes and more lanes on the N3, you know. And what do you do if there's already 4 lanes on each side of the N3? You know.
To touch up on that, how prepared, some of us may not know the extent at which rail is prepared to take on the massive growth or the reforms on the toll 3 if we offload that, and how much of a responsibility do we see rail playing, and how prepared would you say our rail systems are?
Not prepared at all. That's why it needs subsidy. And it must go up to 50-50. I think that's the right balance. That's what the NDP say, but it's not prepared at all. They're busy starting with the technical assessment of the line, but I can tell you in the 80s it had the capacity to run 94 trains a day, and 48 in every half an hour. With signaling and maintenance and stuff like that, it's down to like 30-40. But it's not even running at that. So it needs a massive capital injection. So that's why if there's not going to be a subsidy towards rail on this route, the rail will die. And it's a massive subsidy of few billion a year.
And I would imagine it took some form of considerable willpower for you and your team to put together the amount of work you have on your side. I get the feeling that there's somehow lack of political will to come to the party and help subsidize rail. What impact could it have? Let's say the reforms come on the N3s, everything starts balancing out, but rail still remains lagging. What sort of impact could that have on logistics and the development of that corridor?
Yeah, no, if rail lags, it's going to overburden that corridor. Then you have to build the De Beers bypass quickly, because it's already at a choke point at Van Rienen. And sometime you'll have to build the De Beers bypass, because there was last year 2.8 million containers throughput in Durban. According to Transnet, Durban can develop to 11.2 million. Now, people say, the economy is growing slowly. It will never get there. But I just saw before I came on the call, the car sales again for September is
Yeah,
up
they've gone up.
22%.
Yeah.
It went up from 44,000 to 54,000. It's because they're buying cheaper Chinese cars. And
Okay.
Timo's coming, Shein is coming, Amazon is coming. Those guys are flying in their stuff at the moment. Sooner or later, it will come by container through Durban Harbour. I think the economy is at a tilting point. It's moving to a lower volume, a lower margin, higher volume business. So we could very quickly be at 3.5, 3.8 million containers. And if that grows at 2 or 3% a year, the N3 will choke. You'll have to build it to be a bypass because all that traffic can't go through Van Reenen. Then the town of Harrismith loses quite a bit of its economy, which it's going to lose at some time. Like Ladysmith and Escort and those towns lost it when the N3 didn't go through it anymore. But at the right price, and with look, the private sector will improve the rail, but the losses are so big. We've heard figures of R2.56 expense for every R1 income. Now, the private sector can't sort that out. You see, in 2012, government announced they're going to take on the truckers and they're going to boost rail to 75%. The truckers got so panicky, and 90% of the containers of those days that came back to Durban were empty because we export gold and platinum out of Gauteng, but we import TVs and clothes. Then they started unpacking those containers in Durban, leave the 3-ton cage in Durban, put it on a flatbed, and rail collapsed between Durban and Gauteng. Then they had to cut their prices to get the demand back for rail. They never got it fully back, but suddenly they had to cut the prices by 5,000 rand a container up and down. From then, that line started losing R1 billion a year. Now, the private sector can run it more efficient, but they won't wipe out that loss. So I think between the toll concessions profit and the PBS trucks subsidy, there'll be enough money that rail can work. But you need a terminal in the correct place in Gauteng. That's the Port of Gauteng's position. That's why we call it the superior position. And then you need a speedy terminal that is fast and is not costly. You can't work on the same old methodology as they work at the moment at City Deep and Kazerni. And City Deep and Kazerni takes 7 days to turn around a train. We think we can turn it around in 3 hours. So you know how much less rolling stock you got. So now you reduce the rolling stock, the capital on that. You reduce double travel. And then if they prioritize rail in Durban Harbour and Port of Durban, then there should be enough. And then you put a private sector guy in charge, and then you got the economic transport regulator that's coming, and he can see how much of their tolls can be swung and to subsidize rail. And then I think it will work.
Absolutely. And what measures, I know you've mentioned just a bit summary on it, but what measures are being implemented already that the PBS so that the PBS truck traffic does not sort of, undermine rail freight viability, on the corridor?
There's very little PBS trucks on the corridor because the government has kept PBS trucks very much under wrap.
Why?
But what needs that you must ask the previous 5 years ministers of transport why they never, and there's still Mpumalanga and Free State is against it and things like that. But you 100%. That's why we say the PBS trucks must only be allowed from Port of Durban to the Port of Gauteng. Mustn't be allowed to have a free range to go into North Riding and Rustenburg and those places. Then it will kill rail. That's why my option one is, if you just want low cost, make the toll just a cost recovery with a bit of demand management for the holidays. Don't subsidize the rail with it, so drop the tolls as much as you can and allow PBS trucks everywhere. That will be the lowest logistics cost situation. But it will come at a cost to the rest. to the holiday industry in KwaZulu-Natal, the quality of life of the people in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And so, yeah, there needs to be a balance and a pragmatic approach. I said, we're not against truckers, but the entry can't become a truck highway. It will take away, kill, or it will damage one of the biggest job creation initiatives or industries in KwaZulu-Natal. It will lead to massive job losses in KwaZulu-Natal. It will make life a misery living in Joburg if you can't get to KwaZulu-Natal easily and happily to go on holiday. And then think about all the people that originally from Natal, now working in KwaZulu-Natal and Joburg, that wants to go and see their family. It's got funerals, it's got birthdays, and nobody wants to take the road. And it can't be. The human cost is going to be too much if we allow the truckers to dominate the entry. So we're not against truckers, but then there needs to be a balance between truckers and rail and quality of life and passenger cars, man. You know, not everybody can afford a flight to King Shaka Airport and rent a car for 10 days and then drive to Margate and things like that. You know, you need your car. And yeah, and the flights are expensive over holiday periods and long weekends and stuff like that.
Absolutely. My second last question to you in closing, skills, the area of skills and young people today who are looking at the developments that are happening, your advice in terms of what type of thinking do we need amongst logistics, supply chain, young graduates that are going into this industry? What type of outlook would you encourage to come up to best be able to think about solutions that this industry needs, and what type of young people do we need the industry to be absorbing?
Readers. Read. The old English people said, you read for law. You don't study law. You don't study logistics. You read the articles, read the magazines, read the internet things, and then you look and see. People are lazy to read. Read. Become reading fit and read, that you can see what's happening here, what they're doing there, and then your mind will start developing, and everybody's got a different mindset. But if you don't put the information in your mind, it can't develop your mind, and your mind can't work with it. I see it, young people are too lazy to read. When we enrolled at WITS, one of the first things they advised us those days was buy the business day every day. And we said, the business day. And we started buying the business day, and after 2 years or 3 years of studying at WITS, you were so used to reading the business day every day, you couldn't live without it. And then you realize what's happening in this world. And now we've got the fantastic thing called the internet. You know, your news feed, if you're interested in logistics, there'll be so many news feeds. And then, you know, the university is just the start. It's the first 5 meters of a 5-kilometer race. University. Thereafter, just read. All the information in the world is there.
Absolutely.
On that thing called the internet.
How do you see South Africa's shifts towards, the high volume, low margin freight, including e-commerce shipments? How do you see that playing out and influencing the Port of Gauteng future operations?
It's going to make that there's massive demand for warehousing, and there's going to be demand for big warehousing and close to the market. So Port of Gauteng will have a container terminal, will have a car terminal, because all these, 22% increase in car sales. The GDP is basically up 1%. Wow. So car sales can't up 21% more than that. That means it's substitution.
Yeah.
It is, Now, all those Chinese cars that's getting assembled in Gqeberha and the ones that get imported to Durban Harbour need somewhere to be loaded off in Gauteng. And they need to be stored before they go to the dealership. So it will create, we think the time is right for a massive explosion in logistics space for all of this. Amazon hasn't landed a warehouse in Gauteng yet. Shein has got a small warehouse. They're going to need a big one. Timo's going to need a big warehouse. And then these PBS trucks will need truck yards where they unload and offload. So we think that's why we brought the Port of Gauteng to market now. I think we at the the foothills of a massive increase in volume and warehousing and logistic space demand.
Fantastic. I think you and your team have done an absolutely great job in terms of, this is one of those practical models that, can be used by other departments in terms of coming up with solutions, but that are tangible. I love how you know your numbers across the field, and I just think it builds for such an interesting time going into the future of South African economics. And it's been such a pleasure speaking to you, sir.
Thank you, Lwazi.